Welcome, everyone, to the Watering Hole podcast with Merchant Mermaid. Grab your water. We're going to start with a drink. And as you close your eyes, just give some love to your water. Take a deep breath in the nose and out the nose slowly. Just honoring this space and our ancestors for guiding us here. And just giving your own gratitude to your water as you open your eyes and take a drink. You can say whatever messages you like.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe. We have our first guest in the relaunch of the Watering Hole podcast. I'm so excited. We have a dear sister here, Dionne, whom we went live, we've attempted, and now we've gotten on this platform. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Peace, 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 family. Peace, love, and light. Dionne here. Always grateful to be back here with Water Priestess, Merchant Mermaid. I'm excited always to share and let it flow. Here sharing conversations about how to correct your status, nationality, authentication, learning about the truth behind the birth certificate, why we are even doing what we need to do, and how to build a nation, how to operate through a trust. There's so many components. And so we're going to dive in to just sharing about that. And that's who I am and what I help you navigate through.
Yes, thank you. And we met. You were at the Remedy conference. There's a few commerce community influencers or people online that share. And then when we connected, I had Dionne speak on the Merchant Mermaid, which was just so beautiful because the work that I've been doing with commerce, with the process and the authentication of the birth certificates, I kind of put it on the side for a while. And when you came back into the picture, I'm like, okay, who's this? This is important. And you really brought it back. And I educate on the birth certificate system. And for your lens, do you want to just start with your story of how you uncovered it and then go into, whatever you would like?
Yes, definitely. So let's just start with the fact that I didn't know who I was. I always start there and, just share that piece of me that, 34 years is like going through the rat race and then transitioning into entrepreneurship, working for myself, thinking I have it all together, know what I'm doing. I was helping people grow their business online before transitioning into this phase where I've evolved. And I'm like, all right, I got this thing. And my aunt, who is considered a prophetess, she prayed for me and was just like, Jesus said you don't know who you are. And I'm like, wait, what? How come I didn't get the memo if I'm praying? So I went on this journey of discovery. And what I mean by that is I took time to find, who am I? Why don't I know who I am after all of this time? So I was really taken back by that. But I always feel like God knows the very thing that you need to hear in order for you to move. And for me, that was it. I was already heavily on Telegram. My husband's a music producer. So I was that crazy person that's like, you gonna sell your soul? What do you want out of this? What you doing? And he's just like, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. I don't want the money and fame. It wasn't his thing, which you can check him out, Magic on the Beat. But he was just like, people sell their soul. And so I went looking on Telegram, just going down the rabbit hole, as people will call it, looking for truth, seeking for that truth, whatever that was. I really didn't know. I was just like, how do I find out who am I? So through searching, I started coming across information, and I'm not even really quite sure what I bumped into that was like, that's the thing to start continuing to search more on. I was just like in that space, and I was like, the birth certificate that came up. And it started pointing in the direction to conversations about sovereignty mores. So I started having a conversation with my holistic practitioner about this. And she was like, oh, I know someone who she teaches people about the truth behind the birth certificate and how to become a sovereign citizen. That's the words I kept hearing, sovereign. So I'm like, sovereign citizen. So I met with her, and this is all like within a week span. I met with her, and she gave me Resolution 75. She started giving me all these articles. I remember them, and I still have them because most of them came by text message. So it was like Resolution 75, Dumbs the verses. Like I needed to read all of these things, and we're having a conversation in person. So, I'm asking all of my questions there. And she was like, once you authenticate the birth certificate, you change, you do a name change, and you pretty much live your life after that. And I was like, okay, but you're not going to leave me here. You're going to like help guide me. Right. And she's like, yeah, sure. I did not hear from this woman. I'm telling you, it was just like, so now for me, it was like, I'm a baby into this new information. And, if we think of babies, they depend on somebody. So the baby's like, you gonna feed me more or what? Because I'm hungry.
Right.
And so
right.
I did read the articles that she sent me, and that's what was bringing me further down that hole. Like, oh, she said the Baby Act. That was another article. That's learning what the Baby Act was about.
It's really interesting when you said baby. I was like, whoa, why have I never gotten that drop before about Babylon? Baby Babylon?
Wow.
Right. When you said that, I just got that. I was like, okay, keep flowing.
Yes. So I started researching about what the Baby Act was. And, that is being, going into contracts, though you're legally disabled. You can't sign for yourself if you're a baby. So I'm reading all this stuff. I'm hitting her up like, when are you going to respond to me? And then she finally did respond back. She was like, I'm dealing with a family emergency. So I'm like, okay. So I was really left hanging. And I was kind of frustrated because I'm like, you just open up this whole new door here. Wow. And I don't know what I'm doing. So that same week, I was attending a conference with 19 Keys, and Brother Truth spoke. And I'm like, okay, this is that same information, the connection here. And I'm very, I don't just believe in things just happen. I'm all about like, this is intentional. It is meant to be. And so I'm listening to the information that he was providing. And I'm like, this is it. This is like my next get on this boat and sail off. And so
here we go.
Right. So I'm like off to the next adventure and diving on in the information. And I just kept finding myself, though I was learning a lot, but just like a baby starts to get into things on their own. I'm thinking of my daughter, like, she's crawling now. It's like, okay, I see what's going on here, but let me explore. Let me start opening up things. And so there I was trying to do, was doing paperwork, not really knowing what I was doing. And I would have to say that was that's where I made a lot of mistakes, because I wasn't following my spirit. I was just doing what I was being told from day one.
That's such a good point, because so many people, even the buzzword sovereign citizen, and people find the information and just do, and they get all caught up and overwhelmed in the action taking, and they're not slowing down enough to ask that inner guidance, because we're dealing with a system. that is
Yes.
so much deeper than we can even comprehend. You can't
Yes.
just bypass your DNA like that, or the water
Right.
body, you know?
Exactly. So there was so many components of it coming up that I just had to take a step back. And then when I was filling out documents, templates, it was not resonating with my spirit. And I'm very spiritually led. I have been for a
Mhm.
long time of just sitting with myself. I would say definitely over a decade of spending time with myself. So when my spirit just put a halt in my heart, like, stop right here. This
Mm.
is the end of your road. And something that I think we should all keep in mind is that just with any relationship in life, things can be seasonal. We don't know. And
Yeah.
sometimes we try to hold on to it like it's going to be the forever thing. And that might not be the case. And so I had to learn very quickly how to start feeding myself what I needed. And I only knew what I needed with what I was presented. So I went back and I started looking at the information the woman provided. And then I sat with that and I started to sit with the information that I received through iSelf Law. Sat with that. Then I was also, going down that rabbit hole. I started finding all types of information out there. I was coming
Yeah.
across books. I'm coming across this person and all these words and codes going out there of sovereignty, reclaim it,
Right.
correcting your
Correcting your
status. And
status. Yep.
so I'm like, all right, I got to make something happen on my own. And I had people reaching out to me. And they were only reaching out to me because I was once a part of a group
Mhm.
that, I was asking a lot of questions, being involved, and I was starting to learn a little bit. So they're like, oh, let's do a support group. That's how I really started
Mm.
my tribe. So my
Mm.
tribe members know they came with me when I literally knew nothing.
Yeah.
And and I've
Same.
only been on this journey 7 months.
Yeah.
So people usually ask me, well, how did you, learn all this information in a short amount of time? And this is it. If you remember what I first said, I did not know myself.
Mhm.
That was key. I was learning myself, learning
Mm.
that I was impatient for one. Um, we got to tell the truth about
Oh,
ourselves. Otherwise,
yes.
we'll never grow.
Yes.
So I was learning that I was impatient. I was learning that I wanted the quick fix. I wanted the quick process. I was learning that sometimes I just take information from other people and just go with it.
Yeah,
And
don't follow people, follow information. And that's something that a lot of people in the commerce community share. Don't get stuck in putting people on pedestals and doing everything that they say, because in reality, we're all breaking free of this
yes.
together. And it is
Mm-hmm.
more of an exploration to just recognize and to be humbled by. And yeah, wow.
Right, right. So I learned that and I said, Dionne, you need to just sit with yourself and do what you usually do. Pull out your journal, get your candle. I always have a candle lit.
Mhm.
That element represents so much, igniting a flame in me that was already there. It just needed a little bit more fuel to that fire for me to take off on the journey on my own. Um, and when I started plugging in, so I had already started to change my thoughts on my beliefs that I had, which I don't talk about too much, because it is a journey of self-discovery. So there are pieces and elements that I find very private still as I'm working them out. And it's more so on, we grow up believing everything that we're taught, everything from the religion you take on, the food you eat, the relationships you choose to get in. So I literally just took a step back and said to myself, just reevaluate everything until I find what's true to me. And not because my mom or dad said to believe it, but because I said, and I have the actual blueprint of my truth from me.
Mm.
So that's what I really did. And as I start to lay that out, I'll find myself very angry, upset, crying at times. and then saying, this is business. I have to,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I was also learning that it's business. And I'm just thinking, when you get in front of a judge, right, they don't want to hear all the crying and things. It's almost heartless. Remind me of the Tin
Oh,
Man.
yeah.
And
Right. They're like, give me the facts. It's all about the facts.
exactly. So I just found myself like, all right, it's time to grow up.
Mm.
And as I've heard many times, put on your big girl panties because it's time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing here. And I said I have to create my own lane. And that really came with me just saying, whatever it is that I am going to do in this process, I'm going to document it. And now I've already had probably at this time about 10 people in the support group. And, you know, I was just telling them, like, we're all learning this. So don't put me on a pedestal, because you know where I am. I'm learning this too. But we all need to just be learning, and through the mistakes, you know, this is where we grow, we move forward, we correct the things. And so I started creating my own webinars on you know, certain steps to take, my own tangible work, which I started to feel really proud of. Like, I'm getting it, even though I was like left out there for dry. And then even when I wasn't left out there for dry, I felt like I was running in circles. And so to just come within me, my own water body, as you would say, and being connected with my ancestors. That wasn't something that I grew up being taught. Coming from a very religious background, it's like, you know, just hearing recently, I won't say their name, but they was like, why do you need to talk to dead people? So that's it's surely a conversation to be had. But when I think about connecting with my roots, they are my roots. They're a part of me. So who else other than them would tell me the direction that I need to go, would take up the torch? And I don't even know, you know, this statement is for anybody. For the things that we're doing in our life, why are we doing it? Do we even know if somebody prior to us in our generational line has been doing this before us? How do we know we're not fulfilling it for them, that legacy? So when I was learning about the ancestors and connecting with them, I felt like that was my missing puzzle piece, the root that I need to be connected to. So even when people ask me, like, how do you know all this information in a short amount of time? And I said, well, just like a tree, you know, it has its roots. And if the branch falls off, and I'm sure this is scriptural somewhere, if the branch disconnects, it's like dead. And so I was that branch not connected to my roots. And when I got back in alignment with connecting with my ancestors, and I can't say I have it all figured out, I'm still learning day by day, but the knowledge and information, I felt like I was truly being guided, not by all of the people, but by the information that actually started unlocking within me. Knowing what the next move should be, and checking in, like, is this what I should do versus just doing.
That's very interesting, your journey with your own ancestors and what their legacies are in their generations. And it's so fascinating. And I don't know if you've ever lost anyone or somebody transitioned in your life. It's like they're there and then they're not physically, and yet that connection is still there. So why would we not speak to our ancestors? Why would we not tap into our own lineages? Because that's also the land, you know, the indigenous believe, and to know that the land, the air, the sky, the trees are all of our relatives. You know, that part of it is part of the law, and this learning the different systems of how they've been able to control not only you today, but also your ancestors, your bloodlines.
Yes. And you hit the nail on the head with that. As far as many of us, you know, think about, you know, there's this it's its own stream. I try to tell everybody, focus on one thing at a time. You
Right.
know, we know that our ancestors had land, had houses, buildings, stores, and became naturalized into systems that, you know, took away, stripped us of nationality, stripped us of land and property. And so if we're to go back and retrieve those things, how could we if we're not connected? How could we if we don't know what happened? So we're learning our history, we're learning ourselves, we're learning who they were and what they had. Therefore, we can connect that piece of the puzzle to be able to get to where we need to be for that next step. So, you know, though we all have, you know, steps that I will say are the same in the process, it's different depending on where you are. It's different depending on your own ancestry. And so this is why this process is more spiritual than anything else. If we can get that in our heart, head, and notes, because the only one that can fix our spirituality is ourselves. This is an individual journey. We could have people along, but at the end of the day, just like we go into the ground or however we choose to transition, we go alone. We're born alone. So we have to keep that in mind, that we're always checking with this person and that person to see if this is right and this is okay. But I stop doing that and start checking right here in my own heart, in my own mind, in my own space. And then when I feel like I can't really come to that answer, then I'll start seeking out. But it should always start inward, really.
Yeah, I call it in-source before you outsource, you know, the source within you. And I love that you're sharing this part of it, which I didn't expect to like go into this part right away, although I love that it's going into nationality, right?
Yes.
And oh gosh, this is so big for me because I know a lot of people already know who follow my journey that I have a huge family book with my indigenous ancestors getting domesticated. And I didn't really realize how much we were taken apart. I always say the umbilical cord was cut too soon. Right. And so for the people that don't really know what we're talking about, could you kind of break that down?
Yes. So nationality in itself is its own stream. And I love the question. Everybody always asks me, what do I do about nationality? And we in-source. All right. That's the first thing. Check with yourself, check with your family, check with your grandparents, your parents. And if you're anything like my family, I love them all dearly, but I tell you, it is like pulling teeth to get an answer.
Oh my God.
So, you know, if you happen to just be with you know, your family that has the information, that's great. Ask questions, gather pictures, take notes. You know, there's so much that you can do with just starting with that. And once you do, start writing everything down as what you're learning and who you're learning it from. And this stuff will always be helpful for generations to come, because it's like, who has this? Who's going to have this map of who you all are, your ancestry? Who's going to have it? So creating it for the family. And I know for some of you, like another task, but we're the chosen ones. It's just what it is. And we have to just accept that, or you'll be running for the rest of your life, pretty much. So I would say always start there. And if you have a difficult time, where I've had a difficult time trying to pull answers, figure out what our family had, even as far as land and property, you know, there's books that I reference. Dave Calloway, he has a book about tracing your genealogy. Let me see if I have it. I was going to see if I had it right near me. Usually I do. But it is tracing your family's genealogical, I'm going to get that word right, records. And I can definitely send you over the book link. That book is very helpful with, you know, just pretty much what I lined out, starting with the process of collecting pictures. And then he gives like a nice step-by-step process. And then some people know who they are already. I will say that for myself, I grew up being told you're Black, you're African American, and went with that, right? Just checking it off on paperwork, don't even know
Paperwork. Yeah.
contracts. And it has been genocide by the contract, literally, because back in the 1600s, and I always just like to start there. Indigenous Aboriginal people here, native to the land, had land, but wasn't saying this is my land, this is my territory. It was just, this is for us all to enjoy. This is God's land, God's green earth, right? And just like everybody being like family. And then group of people coming here, what we call usually Europeans or colonists. Look, I don't know, we just, whatever you want to call it, came. And also I would say a little prior to that, if you haven't looked it up, look up Duns Diversas. So this is when the Pope issued the decree to put out perpetual servitude on all Aboriginal Indigenous people. So families were being torn apart, being pushed to convert, encouraged to Christianity, being baptized in a new name. And I always bring up Pocahontas because it's most relatable. I'm like Princess Makatua to Rebecca, like completely different.
Right. And that's so beautiful you're bringing this up, because in the trust history, one of the papal bulls, which if somebody doesn't know what that is, it's literally a decree that the Pope says.
A letter.
And the Pope just came in between God and our people and declared this. And one of the papal bulls that he declared was that all indigenous peoples are enemies of Christ. So you can imagine the entire ripple effect of that.
Right, exactly. That is hitting the nail on the head, because the Pope was this is where the Ceste Cuvée Trust comes in, because usually we're only talking about one of 1666, but there was three. There was three Ceste Cuvée Trusts. And these trusts started in the 1400s, where the Pope wanted to take all the land, the bodies, and the soul. And anybody that was born of England, they actually were supposed to get a percentage of the land. But instead, they put everything through trust and declared everybody dead and lost at sea. And so we were considered dead. And this is like way before the birth certificate even came into any of this.
And what may help to understand this more is one of the papal bulls was the creation of legal fiction, the creation of the commercial name. And they didn't start implementing that until later. And the beginning of the colonization really happened with baptisms. As a way of domestication, which is water,
Yes, exactly. Taking the souls. And just covering this on nationality before I even move into talking about taking of the souls. With nationality, we are going down that generational line of connecting with what our ancestors had, learning who we are. And so I was saying that I was taught that I was Black, I was African American, but those are ethnicities and races, not nationalities. And matter of fact, those ethnicities and races that we classify as, they don't have a nation. They're literally subjects under a system. And I fit that criteria. I did. And many of us opt into that, not realizing what we're actually doing. So what happened is we lost our foreign citizenship. We had, and even using this word citizenship, we never needed it.
Right.
But because we didn't have it, we needed to prove that we had something of stating that we were here before.
Right.
And so declaring your nationality, and it's a declaration, like we think of the Declaration of Independence. It is you stating who and what you are. This is literally what I did in a nationality declaration statement, stating who I am. You take that and you put it on public record.
Mm-hmm.
There's many other steps, but it's almost as simple
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah, and what can help comprehend it for me was at the beginning of this implementation of the legal fiction, it's so interesting. In my book, in my family book, we have lists of the baptisms and the names
Wow.
that they changed into from
Mm,
the 1400s.
really?
Yeah, and it's crazy
Oh,
because in
that,
California, the missions were established by Junipero Serra, who was a priest, a missionary that married some of my ancestors in the missions there. So when I was learning about this commercial system and the creation of race, ethnicity, by classifying them into a system, that was their way of giving the indigenous people land. Okay,
mhm.
you're this tribe, you get this, you're from this clan, you get this land. And what they did through a concept called blood quantum, which is controversial in the indigenous community, I'm just sharing it here. I'm still learning, still learning myself. Is this concept of blood quantum where you have to be one tribe in order to be pure blood, in order to
Mhm.
get the land. And that's how they slowly started erasing the indigenous from the system, the commercial system, and then taking the land. So
Yes.
by you sharing your journey of who am I, where, like, who were my ancestors, one thing, and I don't know if you get this question a lot, is people will ask me, what's our original name then? And I'm like, well, the
Mm,
names back then used to be Jillian of San Luis Obispo, right?
mhm.
Dionne of Atlanta, wherever
Yes.
you were, or your land, the origins that you were from.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, you touched on so many aspects there. And my goodness, I was thinking of whenever a woman would have a baby and they had tribes. So the tribe was created for you to help you never forget who you were.
Mm-hmm.
So for some of us, just the
Mm,
imagery, when you could think of Moana, raised in the tribe
mm,
and being taught the land, being taught who she was, taught how to navigate, taught where not to go far beyond, the reef, stay in. And so learning all the dynamics of who she was and her culture, Pocahontas just throwing these analogies in
yeah.
here for us to think. And Pocahontas talking to Grandmother Willow. Well, who is she? You know, Moana connecting with her grandmother after she died. How did she connect
Yes.
with her? Through elements, and so, just keeping these key components in mind, because our tribe is supposed to remind us of who we are. But if our tribe has been so disconnected, how can we ever pick ourselves back up again? So, that's why it's good to just even go as far back as you can. I love that you've been able to find these records, because people will ask me, and I'm going to say this to those of you listening, because I get this question all the time. I'm having a new baby. What do I do? Do I get a birth certificate
Yes.
for them or do I not? Here is the answer. Do what your ancestors did. Go back and get a piece of paper and record it yourself. They were recording in Bibles, in books,
Oh,
and putting the time down, putting the pounds down
oh,
with this baby's name. And the Bible used to be a record book. Let's just state that
yes.
there.
Yes. I love
and,
it.
and so if we could just keep in mind that, even I feel like with where we are now, we're going back in repeating parts of history. We're going back to how things should have been. And it may not look like it to some of you, but that's where we are, rediscovering our land, rediscovering who our family was, our line, our lineage. And it may seem like it's a mess with all this, COVID stuff going on, but the
Mhm.
distraction, if we can just keep our eyes straight on what is important, and that is researching our family, learning who we are, and connecting with our roots. Who is our roots? Our ancestors.
Right.
And if we can do that, we can really change the dynamics of our generations to come. I met with a woman who she was born in Hawaii. And this is why I say, people ask me, if I join, where are you going to convert me to be a Moor? And I have to just go ahead and address this, because if we can just all have this understanding right here. And this is why I was very hesitant even on teaching nationality, because I'm not going to tell you what religion you should believe. I'm not going to tell you who you should believe in. I'm not going to tell you who you are. This is about self-discovery, for you to create your blueprint for whatever questions you have, whatever you was taught, for you to find out the answers for yourself and what is true to you. And that way, nobody could ever change or shake you or tell you, because you've done your own research. And I feel like that has been what's it for me. Like, nothing's going to move me or shake me, because I found my own truths.
Wow. And I love that you're sharing this, because for me, it really came with the talk about the religious exemptions and going into commerce, because I had so many friends that were like, I need a religious exemption. And then, creating my own trust and my own ministry and 508c1a, getting into, do I want to offer these religious exemptions? Well, the reason why we're exempt is each one of us has the ability to build our own nation. When we build our own nation, we're building our own trust. And when we build our own trust, we're reestablishing that bond with God. And that's why the spirituality is private.
Yes.
We all have religious exemption, because we all have the freedom to have our own connection with our creator in our own way. And that is something that gets kind of twisted. I love that you covered that, because that's a question of, it's a religious question.
Yes, it is. And I tell, whoever's asking, how could you build a nation without knowing your nationality? And that's a part of who we are. We need to know who we are in order to change the course, in order to be, guided on the right path. We don't know all of the things our ancestors were fighting for unless we go and check to see the record of what even so much as dealing with an ailment on our body. We sometimes just think, oh, it's just coming from me. It's something that I did. We never think about, what if there was war between families or something, and then somebody did some spell and, in my generational line end up with it. Like, we never think about things like that. This is why this is so spiritual, because we're checking on all levels with, why are things happening the way that they are? Why do we do what we do? Why do we eat what we eat? Why do we believe what we believe in? Where did it stem from? Where did it start? And is this true with what we need in order to move forward? So, just closing up this piece on nationality, I was meeting with a woman who her family's from Hawaii, and she pretty much had moved away from there. But when she came, she said that she kept feeling the urge to move back, because she moved from there. And when she moved back, it was like everything was coming together for her. She, her family had already had land there. It was taken away from them, and she needed to go back to this process of getting the land back. She didn't know how to go about it, because their family was stripped of so many things. So when I think of somebody asking me, do I need to say that I'm a Moor, and do I need to say that I believe in such and such? And I'm like, do you hear this story? This woman said she's from Hawaii. I met with another woman today who said her family's from Ethiopia. It is you discovering where your family origin is from. Look at the land, look at the states, look at the country. And just keeping this in mind, not to deter anybody from becoming whatever they want to become, but check with yourself, see if that resonates with you before you just start saying, I'm going to become this and I'm going to do this because Susie Betsy Crocker said to do it.
I love that. I gotta say this. I love that you reference movies. And obviously people have their opinions about movies and we're very aware and we get the programming. And at the same time, you recommended I watch Pocahontas. And I
Mm.
mean, as a kid,
Mhm.
that was like my thing. I'm like in nature, climbing the trees, like I'm Pocahontas. Like I had my, my pet hummingbird. And I watched it. And in the
Mm.
very beginning of the movie, and this was right around the time I was going deep into the trust history, and the reason why we share that with you all is because we're going to come full circle with the birth certificate system and how it has to do with the trusts and the creation of them. And there's a song that they sing in the beginning of the movie called The Virginia Company. And they're
Mm-hmm.
literally singing the Virginia Company. And I was looking at my notes because I wanted to tell you this
I
is
can hear it in my mind. Da, da,
right.
da, 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 da.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. And
Virginia Company.
yes,
Yes.
yes. And you can find and for those of you who aren't familiar with the Virginia Company, it was the first charter of Virginia of 1606 that was licensed to settle and colonize America. And so all
Mm.
of these drops, right? All of these the little things that when you listen and you look for them and you're listening to your own inner guidance. That's why when you'll hear Chad or me or Lawful Waters come on and talk, we talk a lot about having our own algorithm with the system. And that's why when people go through these processes in commerce, some of them get a lot of resistance.
Yes.
Some of them are experiencing hiccups and mishaps more than other
Mm-hmm.
people. And that has to do with your nationality. It has to do
Yes.
with what contracts, just like karmic contracts, just like karmic debt, all of those concepts, which you don't have to live a victim of.
Yes.
You can educate yourself on your lineage and on your life and the economy of your ancestors, even within your body. I mean, I have
Yes.
a friend who's adopted and he was telling me that he doesn't know anything and how is he supposed to find out, and all the names were changed and this and that. And I'm like, go within yourself.
Yes.
You just go within. All the answers that we think we need are within us first.
Yes.
In that, yeah.
I love that you're saying that sometimes we do need to just break that down for people. Like in my tribe, we started a separate group called Sacred Circle. And in Sacred Circle is for men and women to connect spiritually, because this process is 100% spiritual.
Right.
And so we're teaching about candling, connecting with your ancestors, fasting, detoxing, all of these components that have to connect back to spirituality.
Right.
And when
Which,
you say,
yeah, I do want to say it's definitely been culturally appropriated in the spiritual new age community of these things. And I love that you're bringing in the nationality part, because these practices aren't new age.
right.
They're ancient.
Ancient, ancient,
Mhm.
ancient. And oh, I don't know what just made me, I'm just glad you said that, because it brought me back to, and I think I started to say it. So in the tribe would help you remember who you are. And the woman, whenever she was pregnant, they would go into this place of the forest that was already very sacred, because earth is sacred. It's been around forever. Water is sacred. It's been around for water. So connecting with these things, like hugging a tree, go hug a tree. It will make you feel better. Seriously. Yeah. And they would huddle together and pray, chant. I won't say pray, chanting to ask what the baby's name was supposed to be, because the name was so powerful. And sometimes we just think of our name, we just come up with all these names, but we don't check. And the reason why is because there's birth charts, and these birth charts connect to numerology, and numerology connected. There's so many other connections of frequencies that if I say hi versus greetings, if I say good morning versus rising, there's frequencies, vibrations. And so our name gives off a vibration that connects us. And not having that, I told you, Princess Mokatawa to Rebecca do you hear the difference?
Right.
Jesus versus Yahweh,
Yes.
Yeshua, it's a
Yes.
big difference.
Yes. And that also affects the molding of your brain, the language and linguistics. A lot of linguists will share about how the language that you speak changes your brain chemistry. So
Yes.
just imagine these ancient languages. Wow, I love that you shared that too, because we did that at one of our reunions. One of our sisters was pregnant, two of them were pregnant, and one of the women, Heather, came and held this ceremony where we all just shared a
Mm.
song to them in the middle of the circle and shared this ancient practice. And it's so funny that you're bringing this up as the name. And this is how we can kind of transition into the birth certificate system because right? Reclaiming your sovereignty.
Taking
Wow.
back your Christian name.
Name. Wow. And it's people ask me, what's my real name then? What's my real name? And I'm like, well, first tune into yourself and ask yourself that first before you go trying to like find
Yes.
it.
And that's what I love that you just reminded me of that piece, checking in with ourselves. How do we do that? What do we do for people that are not familiar with that? I always say, just like detach yourself from all technology. Just put your phone in another place, your laptop, people. This is something that should be sacred, you by yourself. And it doesn't matter where you want to go. I just say find a quiet place, whether that if you need to sit in the bathtub. I know some people say, well, my child comes and knocks at the door. My daughter does. I get it.
Like,
But yeah, I have to be like, can you please please. So I do have like a back room beyond my bathroom, and that's my sacred space. You don't want a place that people are constantly entering in and out of, because it's literally a sacred space. It's like, when you think of an altar space, is sacred. And so having that space, I used to call it at one point a prayer room, just whatever quiet place you want to go to. And you don't want a lot of people going in it, because those are energies. All right. Somebody might have a just bad everything, bad juju, I don't know. And you just want to protect that space. So even if it is outside, sometimes I know how, I don't know your situation, but if you're in a place where it's like people are constantly going in and out of, you have a small space, then fine. It's fine. Maybe it's your car. Finding a place outside, that's fine. But sometimes it, brings in a lot of distractions. The point is you want to be able to hear your mind. You want to be able to hear your thought processes. And when you get used to, sitting with yourself, it takes a little while, because sometimes we have our brain constantly working and going, and, we just have to take some deep breaths. I love how Jill, you just started with like, let's take some deep breaths and close our eyes and, just giving thanks, give gratitude. We're not, coming to the space to just start asking for everything. And it's really intimate with you. And I could say this, like, I learned this even before I got married. It's just spending time with me. That way it's like nobody doesn't need to bring anything to the table to me. It all starts within myself. I'm going to make me happy. I'm going to, find a way to help be guided within me. Right. And when somebody comes along, that's like added icing on the cake. We could be happy together, but I'm not going to depend on you for my happiness.
Right.
So, just yes, taking that concept, spending time with yourself. I love candles. Find the things that you love and bring it into that environment. I usually have a journal, my pen ready in case, the thoughts start flowing. I write things down that come, whenever you have something come up within your spirit that seems like, oh, I haven't thought about this before. That's it right there. That's really how it just starts beginning. For those of you that are, maybe new to checking in and spending time with yourself, because I know we're so busy, but you matter more. You're more important. And when you start valuing yourself, it's just automatic alignment.
Right. And it helps to navigate through the commerce information, because there can be a lot of information in the processes. So can you explain, let's just start with the name and go into
Yes.
the birth certificate system?
Yes. So some people may think that, they don't have to do the name change. And I'll just say, this is my take on it. We all have different lens, right? So some people say it's not necessary at all. Some people will say you don't need to do the birth certificate process at all. This is you checking in with self again and seeing what your spirit says. So for me, because I once had the thought, I don't need to change my name. But when I think about my ancestry, when I think about my nationality and how these intertwine with one another, and when I think about the fact that my mom, my dad didn't know any better, didn't have a tribe connected to help them be grounded and chant for this name that they came up for me. I felt it necessary to check with my spirit to say, do I need to change my name? Is there another name that I was supposed to have? And I went into my sacred space and I wrote that down and I left it right there. That's usually how I deal with all the questions that I don't have answers to right then and there. Is I know that it may come overnight. It may come in a dream. I know that it may come to my spirit a week later. So I just left it there, my sacred space, on my journal, and waited for the answer to come. When that answer came back, it was yes, and this is actually your name. There's a part of the name that I'm not going to say because that's my private name, but Dionne Ali L was the name that was like, this is the name. This is what you were supposed to be named. And that vibration, I'm still learning the components of the numerology with it. But actually a friend of mine gave me the key code she was like, yeah, she just started saying, she was excited. She was like, this name is powerful. And, I'm like, oh, wow. She started telling me that. So basically we think of the letters of the alphabet, 26 letters. And for each one, there's a number in coordinate with that letter. And then, you sum it up. So basically what the total is of the letters of your name, that is equivalent to the next thing. So, the vibration, and she was just like, this is it. And when I was looking up what Ali L meant, whether it be true or not, the first thing when I went looking up meant return to God. And I said, what? And I was like, wow, it really hit me, because I'm like, this is what makes so much sense in connecting with this process of sovereignty. Like when I think about being raised in the church and about God, I'm like, this cannot be the life God has for us. Right. that was my thought, is like, this feels like hell on earth. There's no way. And when I was just thinking of return to God, Ali El, that's what that means in Hebrew, I believe. For those that want to fact check it, I'll tell you what resonated with my spirit and why I chose it. But when I think of that, I just felt like we were pulled away from God, and we were through the registration of our birth certificate. Right. And so, the other aspect of it is that in this process, there is the UCC filing that does need to be done. And the UCC stands for Universal Commercial Code. And this is all transactions that happen in commerce that is universally known. And so in this filing, you're basically going through a process of transferring all the property that you have acquired through your straw man or, your debtor self over into your trust. So some states give resistance on your name. So, and I don't like to teach this, but it's important for us to know. Your name in uppercase, lowercase is a difference. When we see our name in all caps, that does represent a business. Yeah. All businesses. It doesn't matter if it's LLC, trademark, it's in all caps. But if I was to say my name out loud, Dionne Ali L, you don't know whether I'm saying it, if it's in all caps or uppercase, lowercase. So that's why I don't like us to stay there. I want us to think about the thought that it's the order of the name. Gotcha. So if I say what my legal name is Tiara Dionne Washington, first, middle, last is the debtor side. If I say Washington, Tiara, Dionne, that is the creditor side. And most countries put their family first, but we here learn to put our family last.
Wow. That is so fascinating. So can you say that again? The debtor is, yeah.
The debtor is your first, middle, last name. And what we know as the secured party, the creditor, that is your last name, first, middle.
We're getting into quantum grammar right now. Quantum grammar and syntax. This is very fascinating to me because keep flowing.
So what the issue has been for some people that have come before me that are much more seasoned than I have said, and I didn't experience this. And I think just because my journey and process with checking in with myself has been very different navigating, I have not really had much resistance at all. But I think that speaks volumes to the process and the way that I'm handling this is I know it's all spiritual. So I'm like, Beyonce says, we going at this together. I'm putting this before the altar because I know that, you see what I cannot see. So just thinking of that aspect, I didn't have any issues. But the reason why most states have resistance is because it looks like the person that is trying to transfer the property is the same person. Because we're taught to put our first, middle, last listed as the debtor. And then we're taught to put our secured party person as the last, first, middle name. But it still all says the same name, just in different orders, which we know is true. However, looking at the document, these people are like, that's the same person. No, you can't do that. And so this is where we take the path of least resistance and we have a spiritual name. And that spiritual name, it's an easy property conveyance of the transfer. There's no question of who it is. But what stuck with my soul the most was that Dionne Ali L is untouchable, like Neo. You don't know who I am. You don't even know that I'm operating as an express trust unless I told you. You don't know me. I don't have a social security number. I never did. I'm untouchable.
Right.
So for me, that was more powerful than the connection with the straw man. I don't hate the straw man. We're going to work it out. We're going to take control of it. We're not going to get rid of it. We're not going to throw it away. We're not going to throw him in the trash. We're not going to keep him buried, dead and lost at sea. We're going to just bring him on in and take control, but just let him know, look, I'm the one with the brain here.
So it's naming is, what I got from that. It was so beautiful is you're bringing a name, a frequency to your substance.
Yes.
To your water, to your substance. Because the name in form wise through, the legal system, through the commercial system is based on form. And if coming from that lens, it's very concrete and it's a label. There's a difference between a label and an essence.
Yes. Definitely.
That change. Wow, that's beautiful.
And I feel that. So even when people call me Tiara Dionne, it doesn't hit the same way.
Wow.
And also I've created Tiara Dionne into a business too. Tiara Dionne writes books. She's the book author.
I love that.
She's the book author, and Dionne Ali L knows herself, knows law, knows commerce, knows how
Mhm.
to jump in and jump out like Neo. I'm no longer Mr. Anderson for those of us that have seen The Matrix.
Yeah.
You know, being able to just plug in when you need to, get done what you need to get done. And then it's like, I'm off the record. And so that's just thinking about why people do the name change. Those are the like the main reasons why, so you can really be completely private, because it's very hard when you're standing in front of a judge, if you ever have to, and they're calling you by your legal name, which is also the straw man name. And you're trying to tell them, and I've seen people sit there like, that's my straw man. Listen, in court,
Yeah.
they don't want to, they really will think you're crazy. Crazy card, and toss
Yeah.
you in jail.
That's the whole
That's the part
sovereign
that people,
citizen thing, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen. That's not real. And I've done that too. And,
we all do. I think
I'm
it's
like,
just
oh,
a part of the teenage phase, right?
right.
We're
Right.
not going to pay anything else. We're going to
Yes.
just let everything go. And
I'm
nobody
not a
can tell
part of
me
the
who I am,
system.
but you see how we
Yeah.
grew up. We were babies. Remember, I was baby. I was, somebody feed me. I'm hungry.
Right.
I got fed a little bit, and then it's like, all right, you're walking on your own. I'm eating. And we need to make sure that we're also eating high frequency foods in this process.
Yeah.
I've dealt with some of my clients that eating crap, and we all were there before. But if we imagine we're trying to do this process, we're trying to understand what we need to digest. We're eating spiritual food right here.
Right.
So when we're intaking foods that are not conducive to this process, it makes it really hard. You can't,
Oh my
your
goodness.
memory
Yeah.
needs these high vibrational foods so that it can function, so that it could, take on all the new information, because we're literally learning this. If you think of like a baby, the goal is that you feed them, you give them all the nutrients, they eat right. But well, where are we in this phase? We know sometime when we get to the teenager phase, you just eat whatever. So the
Wow.
so having this mindset in it, like, I have to eat right. I have to try to do better for myself. I have to hydrate myself with the proper nutrients, because my mind is dependent on it. Our mind is growing constantly. And if you think of like the baby's development of their brain, we're coming into this born again.
Right.
We're born again.
Whoa. That, and like the way that we are born again is through water. The baptism's the born again. And what are we rebirthing into? And how can we bypass the water body with what we're intaking, what we're consuming, what we're digesting? How can we continue to steer our ships when the ship ain't hydrated?
Right.
That's a good point. Okay, so for the people that might be new to this information, can you go into what is the straw man?
Yes, absolutely. I love that question. First of all, you know that I'm very resourceful in terms of books. I highly recommend, just get all the David E. Robinson books.
Right.
And I have the links in there, like $5 on Amazon. This is Meet Your Straw Man. And actually started an untraditional church. So we were going into this book on Sunday. And what is a straw man? A straw man is a fictitious legal entity created with the hope that as a child grows up, he will be fooled into believing that he is actually the straw man, which he most definitely is not, and pay all sorts of imaginary costs and liabilities which get attached to the straw man by con artists.
Boom.
And even this book is amazing, but even just the page by page, just go, you're like, oh my gosh, you'll find yourself mad, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. And
Because
that's that sacred rage that sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves, for sure. It's just
yes. So
so
when I
funny how it's fake, like how they refer to it as imaginary. And it's also legal fiction. Just sit with that word for those two words put together, like legal fiction. Fiction is fake.
Legal
Legal.
is fake. Like, think
Right.
of money, legal tender. It is paper,
Mhm,
fiat
mhm.
money, lawful money. Big
Yeah.
difference in something that we
Big.
all need to understand, that difference between legal and lawful.
Right.
And so you're right. Legal, fiction, all made up. And let's talk about being all made up. I thought of this the other day and I was like, because I loved the movie The Wizard of Oz. Loved till I started the process of breaking that down and decoding, like, oh my gosh, these evil people.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, made up. Like, when you think of the scarecrow, you're making up with your hands. Well, isn't that how the paper is made? We're making it
Yeah.
up, and they're making up with no brain, because they're like, these people are brainless, they're clueless, they don't have a clue. Let's create a paper them. And we think of the movie The Wizard of Oz, like this, the scarecrow, he was a human before. And then, so what this whole allegory is about is like, the 1933, there was a recession, depression, everything going on with, the markets crashing, and the United States going bankrupt. And so it was like, we're no longer in Kansas anymore, because it was like the land of the free, the home of the brave. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
Right.
States of America, like the whole thing. We all loved it. And, and then it was like, what is happening here? The storm hit. We're no
Mhm.
longer in Kansas, and people lost their brains. We were told, send back in, give us the gold, give us the coins, and we'll hook you up with this and that. Didn't end
Wow.
up with nothing. Didn't
Mhm.
end up with nothing. And that's where the Federal Reserve banking started. International banking came in. And that was the
1933.
worst thing that could have happened.
Mhm.
Because at that point, it's like, and this birth certificate didn't even come into the 1900s. So we're looking at this timeline like, oh my gosh, from when this started. And actually, in the original Wizard of Oz, it was a book that came out before the movie.
Mhm.
And they changed like the red slippers in there to it was silver, then it changed to red. It was showing that everything was backed by the blood of the people at that point
Whoa,
when
the
the movie came
soul.
out. So the book, it was
Mhm.
silver, and then the movie, they changed the slippers to red. And that's what it was really explaining and breaking down. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just
Wow. And that's something that I know Bianca, Miss Numismatics on
yes.
Instagram,
Yes.
and how she breaks down that silver ends the Fed. And you just said silver shoes instead of red shoes. And the
Mm-hmm.
red, the blood is mostly made up of water, and the soul is housed in the waters of the body. The soul is housed in the substance.
Whew.
Wow.
Yes. And it is so deep, because we're going this whole time through this process thinking we need to go to somebody else, Tom, Dick, and Harry, Susie, Betsy, Crocker, for our brain, for our house, for
Mm,
our
the
home, for the,
government. Wow.
the everybody. Dorothy, what was she searching for? She wanted to go back home. Tin Man, he wanted a heart. Scarecrow needed a brain. The lion wanted courage. What everything they needed was inside of them. But
Mhm.
they still wanted to go to that wizard, right? Because there was something about it. This wizard's going to give me it. And to get there, they see that he's a fool.
Mhm.
Just like many of us dealing with, I'm going to leave that alone, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah. The yellow
You
brick
go into these
road.
person thinking they have all the answers. And we need to remember that sometimes people are seasoning, sometimes they're the awakening crew. We
Yeah.
just have to keep in mind that everything we need is within us.
Right.
That was my message in my untraditional church on Sunday.
I love that. I love that. And
Yes.
just comprehending that for people, going to understand the straw man and the legal fiction and the difference between legal and lawful. And so could you go into how we are, like how the birth certificate system uses us as collateral for the debt of the United States?
Yes.
That whole
Yes.
part.
So anytime we talked about what our ancestors used to do, creating their own records. Well, because the United States was bankrupt and they already got themselves into hot water because they allowed that bank, the first international bank that opened in Philadelphia, to be here. And, these international people with this banking system, they were already, I will say the Rothschilds behind this, so many deep, 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 sick situations, I'll say, to be behind this. But, this was them creating credit out of thin air, just money out of thin air. And what better to back it up with people that they can keep track of? Mm-hmm. So with the birth certificate being registered, we all have estates. Let me say that. Mm-hmm. With the birth certificate being registered, there's already a state created. And I'm saying estate, estate. We were all considered dead and lost at sea. The Ceste Cuvée Act, and I probably butcher that name. I apologize for those that really care. But with this act being created and us having a state, they wanted to have all control, land, body, and soul. So when our birth certificate became registered, that was our soul being tied into the government. And I always say now, this is a soul tie, because right there, we created a relationship, we created a bond, and then being born into the sin, SSN, the social security number that was issued to us automatically. We didn't sign up for it. None of us remember creating a contract. It just became automatic once the birth certificate became registered.
It reminds me of the court system and how we're guilty until proven innocent, and how in religion we're, guilty, born guilty. And in Canada, their social security numbers are called SIN numbers, SIN numbers. So it's interesting how the correlations with the Bible and
Yes. And this is why I'm like, y'all go ahead and read your Bibles. Read it with a fine-tooth comb, because it won't, once you're in this process, and I've read the Bible all the way through many, many times in my life. I actually used to be a Sunday school teacher. So I look at it now, when you're in different seasons of your life, things don't mean it the same. It has a different understanding. That's why we have to go back and reread it, unlearning to relearn, especially based off of our new experiences. Mm-hmm. So, being born into sin, we became debt slaves through our birth certificate being fooled. So, if we could think of the stock market, there's a public and private side. I always just use this example because it's more tangible. Chick-fil-A is a private owned company. They don't have to report to anybody. They can close on Sundays. They can do what they want, keep their financial chooses to themselves. All right. Then we have public companies. Let's just say Walmart, Apple, Microsoft. These are public, meaning people can pour into them and pull out from them at any given time. These are securities being traded on. So basically, somebody goes to that public bank and asks them, what's the value of this company worth? They tell them. So somebody took our birth certificate, said, what's the value of this? And it was valued at $1 million. So just like a stock exchange, our birth certificates were put on the New York Stock Exchange to be traded on. And people make money off of our securities with our signature, that wet ink signature. And people are getting so clever to do everything electronic because businesses cannot sign anything.
Right. Wow.
So with our birth certificates being registered, these are securities being traded on day in and day out. And I always just think of like, they'd be happy when somebody dies, because most people don't know that usually it goes through probate if you don't have a trust and such set up, and then it becomes the national treasure. Y'all seen that movie? It becomes treasure for everybody. That's what Nicolas Cage, it becomes
I've
treasure
never
for.
seen that movie. I'm gonna put that on my movie list.
Yes, I think there's like four of them or so, but definitely worth the watch. That becomes national treasure right there, because usually in this case, and this has happened in my family, like not being prepared for, the death of somebody, and then they die. You don't have anything set up. Everybody's trying to juggle around and pay these funeral costs. Then you have the court all up in your business. Like, all right, you got to deal with listing out your assets, because
Right.
now you have people that want to come for them. They don't waste no time. None. So they're coming, and I kid you not, this has been a real life experience. My aunt had transitioned last year. And just thinking of this window of the time that she transitioned to the time that literally, my cousins was like getting summoned because he didn't have paperwork in time, because they're like, we need your assets. We need to know what's what. And this is what happens when trusts are not set up in families. And so, because otherwise the state can come in and decide what's going to happen with your assets. It becomes public. You have to pretty much like run it through an ad. And if anybody wants to come after it, they can. So the protection is having a trust. Right now, we're out here naked. We're literally naked. We've been stripped of everything. We've already talked about nationality. We've already talked about, just not being in a covenant, not having our own nation to be built. We're living under somebody else's rock right now, on somebody else's ship. And so, just getting to this space of like, oh, I need to create a trust to protect and get back into the space that God had always desired us to be, because we became separated that when our soul got sold. And I would say our soul most definitely got sold, because I'm like, it's human trafficking. They have taken they have taken a body and traded on it globally.
And guess who delivers that to them? The mother.
Exactly. So
That's
on
why
some
this,
of
oh wow, this work goes so deep. I'm glad that you really are sharing the depths, and we started with the spirituality of it, and it may be different for other people. And that's why it's so important to understand this first in the bigger picture of all the layers of it before you go
yes,
trying to move it so fast or bypass it, or and that's why our ancestors are so happy that like you slowing down. This is
yes,
good, you
because
know.
they need to comprehend it. I didn't know that. My holistic practitioner said to me that, for those of you that choose to get like spiritual advisories, if you're not sure how to tap in with them and such, and she was like, you're going too fast for them. They wasn't living during this time. When they transitioned, they've transitioned at the time that they were at. The 1600s is nothing like today. I mean, in a sense where it's like, we have all this new grammar, all these different books and it's a lot. And we're such a fast-paced generation that everything, technology. So it's like, we can get things done. We got the computers to do it. We can go into places. We got cars. It's so different. They didn't have that type of access. So when I think of it, it's like, yes, we need to slow down. Even myself, I made so many mistakes from not slowing down in the process. And it is. And I love how Bebe Royale, he said, it has the documents have to dock you in the mind first. They have to document there. It's not just templates we're filling out, because essentially it's like we are becoming. We're becoming. And a part of this paperwork is we are a part of this going out. And when I think about this contract that they created, this legal fiction, this paper, your birth certificate, that is now so many different variations, certificate of live birth, long form, short form, you name it, just like variations of our names to create confusion. So we need to have this understanding of how the enemy operates. Who is the enemy? Well, it could be inside of us. It could be Lucifer, whatever you want to call it, right? But confusion, deception, lies, what is all that tied to?
Right.
then we look at over here, it's like, this is good. This is lawful. This is creator. This
God's
is
law.
natural. God's natural
Yes.
law, common law, Magna
Yeah.
Carta, all in one. Right. And when you start to see these separations of good and evil, you're like, whoa, I was in that. I thought I was out of it.
Right.
Because, I was baptized by the blood spirit 1,500 times. And
Oh, man.
So it's like, I thought I was free. How many times do I have to dip myself in this water?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the in the book Word Magic, Pao Chang refers to baptisms as a covenant with the church. And that's the thing, you be baptizing yourself to other people.
Whoo, honey.
And other things outside of you.
Even words like
That
amen.
right.
And that to be, and I told people on Sunday, we're not closing out prayers with amen, because Amen Ra was a sun deity, a god. And we never know who we're worshiping. If we go further back, I was saying Aboriginal Indigenous people were encouraged. Some encouraged, some forced to convert to Christianity and to convert to, whatever the Pope issued and decreed and such.
It's very interesting that the process of the birth certificate system for me was such a bodily, like my body really had to process it, and I could feel the depth, and I was like looking around, like, does anybody else feel this right now?
Yes.
And with that knowledge of pulling our people out of the water, not necessarily rescuing them, just showing them how to breathe in the water, how to breathe in the water, so you're not drowning in maritime admiralty seas, right? And so this birth certificate system, why it's so prevalent and why it's so important, which is just so funny because in the Merchant Mermaid and in all the things that I would educate, it was always the birth certificate system. I just never really talked about the authentication process, which we'll get into in a second. Yes. And now this, seeing how it's connected to everything and how the water body was bonded to a system that controlled the mind. Yeah. And yet now we're coming back to the inherent intelligence within us that's already there. And if you still haven't grasped that, even though we've said it like so many times in this podcast, like you're still going to outsource and you're finding yourself frustrated and expecting this to be easier, again, come back in, because when we dive into this part of it, the authentication part of it, navigating that part, like uncovering your name and everything, is so important to in-source.
Yes. And to be honest, I have found that, and I tell my tribe members all the time, when we have our monthly Q&A, do not ask me any questions about discharging debt. I'm so serious. Wow. And I say, the only people who can ask me about discharging debt is the people who have set up a trust and are operating through the trust and have been through the whole process.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I always see that the people who need a lifesaver, thrown to them because they're drowning and they got their hands up, help me, save me, I'm going under, is because they choose to go rogue. Nobody told you to go start doing that. You want to get ahead of yourself. And I was there, if we just focus on securing ourselves first, I'm like, the process is so much easier. I'm like, let that be your gold, your inheritance that you are like so excited you went through the process to get to. To me, it's like that yellow brick road experience where it's like, I know that I'm going to get there. It's just a matter of time. And if I could just stay on the path without letting people persuade me this way and get taken this way, and just go straight ahead to where my compass is leading me. All right, great. Then I'm secure in this and I'm focused. I don't feel overwhelmed. The guide and the step-by-step resource checklist that I created. It's right here. I can always refer to it when I feel like I'm getting lost. There's no reason why I should get lost if my compass is right in front of me. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, okay, I'm on course. I'm going where I'm supposed to. I'm going through the courses accordingly. Mm-hmm. And it's like, great, I'm here. I'm in this place. And every time somebody chooses to take a different route, it's like, well, I never told you to do that. And you know, there's something about being in position. When you're in position, you can operate power differently. It's just like, for instance, let me just think of what's in my mind right now. I'm just going to use this president right now, right? He's in this position of power. And it seems that, you know, I don't know what makes us think that whatever we say is going to he's still going to be the president. It don't matter what is happening down here. But there's something about when you're in that position of power, people have to shake and they have to move and they have to start. And so when people are trying to be in that position of power, but they're not really in it, it's so hard to get things to move because, you know, people are not going to respond or respect you the same way. So
and that's the same. It reminds me of, you know, not building your immune system before you go out or something like that, you know, because I see the private side, especially the trust, you know, what builds our immune system the most is faith,
yes,
and trust.
Absolutely.
Right.
Exactly.
And fear collapses the immune system, collapses the aura. So you're building your private immune system for your generational wealth, for your assets, for that legacy and protecting it. And that's a very motherly grandmother energy. That's different than the maiden, you know, the young that goes out and, you know, just wants to get what she wants when she wants it, wants to manifest everything that she wants when she wants it.
Yes.
And that's a maturation process.
Most definitely. And so, you know, if we can just, I love how you said that because it's also making me think of the spoiled child, you know, still in that phase. It's like, well, my parents have it all. They're wealthy. They're great. They have this, they have that. They'll just buy me a car and blah, 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 blah. And they get out there and they wreck it and come back with their hand out expecting for more. Right. And it's like, when will you learn? So, you know, with discharge and debt, I always say, like, you know, of course, as consumers, we have the right. People ask me this question all the time. Can I still discharge debt? Sure, you could do whatever you want to do. You know, of course, you can discharge debt as a consumer. You have consumer rights. You know, it's a matter of using it, knowing it, applying it, and starting your administrative process if that's what you want to do. But there's nothing like being secure. There's nothing like being a creditor and not referred to as a debtor. There's nothing like expressing yourself through a trust and coming at them with your, you know, copyright and trademark and injunction all in one. Like, you a powerhouse at that point. Nobody mess with you. You're in that neo phase of like extra arms and everything coming out.
Right. And that consumption goes very deep into the consumptive energies of sales and marketing and lack and scarcity and needing to take in order to gain, and being in a consumptive energy of buy, or, you know, consume on social media. And what really interests me is why you in that? Where are you at? Why are you there? What are you trying to discharge? How did you get yourself there in the first place? Because that was something I had to ask myself when my car got towed from me not paying my bills and finding out that I can do this and that, and I can clear it with my social, you know, all of that. It's what got you into that first, and learn the lessons that got you there first, so that you can take responsibility and respond with your ability to secure yourself.
Yes. Ooh, that's
how are you
everything.
able to move, you know? And it's for people who don't know, there is totally a almost like an illusion of finding the commerce and the sovereignty stuff and getting rid of all your debt and you leaving the system. It's very fantasized. Right. And a
Yeah.
lot, and me myself too. When I first found it, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm leaving, not paying this, not paying that. I got a sovereignty, this, that, and the other. And it's beautiful to share it from a more grounded lens now because I feel that those that are waking up to it, that know that there is that young energy in it, can recognize it and have their own discernment.
Yes, exactly. That teenage phase, you
Mhm.
know, we grew up and then we got to that teenage phase, like, I'm going to rebel against everything. It's like, hold
Yes.
up. You know, and I think of that actually in my 20s, just like, I'm going to do everything that somebody told me not to do. I'm going to do that and not be responsible. And for those of us that's out here not responding back to the IRS or these, you know, tickets that we have and such, like, you have to respond. It actually says it in our IRC code. You need to respond immediately.
Wow.
With no, when you don't respond, acquiescence is silence. Like, you are basically putting yourself in position to for them to keep coming after you.
Mhm.
So we have to respond. That's that administrative process.
Yes.
And you actually created a video on your Instagram where just I had it through my mind when it's like, you know, conquering everything. You were doing like a kung fu
Oh,
type thing.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I feel like that's like the level right there
Oh,
of being
so
a
true.
combat. You know, it is levels to this. And I hate to say that, but there is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and levels in a sense where it's like literally like go through one thing to the next, not levels as far as like, oh, I'm greater than, because somebody did ask me, how did
Mhm.
you get to that level? Or how are you so smart? And those questions, I'm like, anybody could do this. All right.
Right?
Anybody. And I have to be that transparent because I'm like, I show y'all the books and literally the
Yeah.
step-by-step process, my
Yeah.
paperwork, I'm going through the process, you know?
Right.
And it's just that I am committed. We have to be committed. We
Mhm.
have to choose to not give up and throw in the towel when it gets difficult. We have to understand what this means for us, what this means for our family. Always going back to that why. Why are
Mhm.
we doing what we are doing? Are we doing it because somebody else said, which sounds good? I know the pretty picture of full faith and credit was surely painted to me at the beginning. So I'm like, yeah, we discharging debt. We party over here. Yeah, we about to get
Oh,
full faith.
man.
I'm having a whole party, like, family, guess what? You know? And it's like,
Mhm.
hold on, let's pull back here. Okay. You cannot sail this ship. You never sat in the seat to sail a
Yes.
ship before. So you don't know what you're doing. And
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, all right. So I
So
had to
that
learn.
right. And that so when people wake up to the birth certificate system and everybody listening to this can do their own research on the Federal Reserve 1933, highly recommend it. What most people do is they ask me, what do I do? How do I leave the system? Where do I start? What do I do with my name? So what is the process that you take people through? Um yeah, what is that process and what is that solution for you?
You know, of course, starting with self, as we mentioned, getting into your mind that these are separate streams. I always say, like, nationality over here.
Mhm.
You know, there's the correcting your political status, like really dealing with the contracts that's out there that we have, whether that's voting, maybe you opted into voting, maybe you have, you know, your driver's license, your car is registered, you have a marriage license, looking at those contracts. That's the correction of your political status for me.
Mhm.
And then you have you know, the knowing yourself, that's always going to be that piece of it, connecting back with the rest of like what documents were connected to me that I filled out. You know, how does my nationality fit into this? That's always like the middle center, always connecting back. And then there is the, all right, let's do this thing, let's execute. get it done in learning the legalese, learning contracts, going to the resource in the books. So I feel like the first step in here is set up a goddamn PO box, separate yourself from, just start there. Cause a lot of us are working from home for the most part, or, we've done business in the home, and it's just like, get in the habit of separating yourself.
Right.
You don't want to do business where you reside, you domicile. So set up a PO box. I know some people say set up a private PO box. Just set up a 6 months plan and then change it over time to a private one when you establish and get international IDs, when you are, you'll know when you're moved closer to the foreign citizen national side, whatever you want to call it. You'll know when you've moved to that side is when you're able to supply those documents that they're asking for in order to have a private PO box. And you can also do affidavits of truth, but I like the path of least resistance. That's just me. I'm like, okay, that's what I need when I get there. And I have found that it has been easy taking that route. So that's what I say, starting with that. And then you want to decide, is this for you? I think we should really have a PO box separate from our house. But the next thing is like, ask yourself, is this it for you? I've had people that come to me, well, can I still work? Can I still collect Social Security benefits? Can I still get food stamps? And, all types of things. What does this really mean? Can I still do taxes? Something to understand about public and private is that you're separating yourself from the government because we were born to depend on them, right? Yeah. That's the whole point, is we were born to depend on them. They became our parents, essentially, because on our birth certificate, for most of us, if you were born of certain years, it says informant instead of mother. So they already are like, we're taking you, you're our child. As a matter of fact, we have you, we're going to be your power of attorney. We're going to have control over your life. When you die, we're going to take your trust and we're going to own everything that you have. That's their mindset. And everything, that is also registered to them belongs to them. Property cannot own property. So just having this understanding of who we are, that we can never be a corporation, because that's what they try to make out of us. So, keeping that in mind, that I am never going to be a corporation. I am not the straw man. And seeing who I am in order to do these next phases. Right. So can I, be able to create my own, because we were taught work for somebody else. That's why they have public schools and public everything, because they are training you to either become their lab rat or,
I consciousness.
Exactly. I'm like, people that become doctors and nurses, nothing to, I appreciate you. However, they're being trained to kill. Yeah. It's just the reality, because we know that there's cures for cancer, AIDS, HIV, you name it. There's cures. And usually they kill these people off that are out here, sharing that information because they need to make the money. That's what they're concerned about. The greed, profit. The money, the deception, the lies, it's all back on that evil side of what we were born into, that sin. So, unfortunately, we're dealing with, so there's the hospital, then public schools is like, all right, this is public. We can teach you what we want to teach you, even if we need to make up a book to do it. That way you would be being, misinformed and not taught the truth. And then it's about wasting time. We learned all about this in my untraditional church. Waste time. That's the two major things: push you into fear and make you waste time. Because if we can make you waste time and make you fearful, goodness, we got you fucked up. I'm sorry, there's no other word to say it. Like, that's just what it is. I think of my own life, like, gosh, I have a master's degree. I wasted so many daggone years. It
goes back to time. And I've connected a lot of drops with time and the creation of time and employee consciousness, trading time for money and spending time, and the missions, instilling time with the bell systems. Like,
oh yeah,
it's so deep how deep the control goes, and essentially being able to navigate your own ship and learning more about the processes, because even some of these processes, if you're listening to this and you don't know what she's talking about, that's a little drop to show you, hey, go learn more about it then. Instead of
Right.
waiting for it to be spoon fed to you and you're getting frustrated because it's not being spoon fed to you. You know, that's
Yes.
the private side of this information. We can only share so much on a podcast. We can only share so much on an Instagram post,
Right.
and that, just honoring that and setting those boundaries with our work, especially
Yes.
with the realm that we're in, and we have so many, people looking at us like lawyers. We're not
Right.
lawyers. And you know what I mean? One day there'll be lawful lawyers in that way,
Yes. Yes.
So to really close this out, because I know we've been flowing. This is
Yes.
good. I love this. Can you, yeah, share more about your offerings and how people can find you, and about Deep Sea Royalty, which I'm so excited. You got the water codes.
Yes, yes. So most definitely, I have created the Deep Sea Resource Guide, and this is literally, it's my treasure, it's my gem, it's my baby. When I was feeling overwhelmed in this process, like where do I start? Where do I begin? I created my compass. This is my map. And so when I am feeling overwhelmed, this is where I go to. And I started by just writing down what are the steps that I need to take. And so, from beginning to end, I have my foundation courses. And I call them foundation courses because we need to build a foundation. This is literally, you think of a house with no walls is literally just to be, it's impossible for it to stand. So we're building from the foundation up. So when you're out there on your own, you know how to stand by yourself. You know how to stand on your own square. You can speak for yourself, and you're not running to my friends, Susie Betsy Crocker, and asking, save me, save me. And so it is there with the step-by-step guide from beginning to end. And it will guide you in the process. Authentication, we have webinars on trust, the UCC process, taking control of your straw man. My favorite course that I just last recorded was called the non-UCC webinar, The Last Straw.
Wow.
Yes, so it's all there. And then now Deep Sea Royalty is its own business, its own brand, its own baby. But Deep Sea Royalty really goes deeper into the history of, like, how do we even end up here? Getting into the banking system, talking about the people who are behind this, the they that we never want to say, right? The elites, the Rothschild, the Freemasons, all the black magic, and all of that going into it, the connections with the 5G, the vaccines, you name it, that's what Deep Sea, because those are the in-depth, deep parts. When you think about the ocean, it's so complex, right? It's so complex. It could be so scary. Like they don't go beyond the reef, or don't go too far down, But we're water babies. We were born in water. So why are they trying to keep us from going there?
We can breathe. We can breathe.
We are aquatic people. And actually, when you think of, man, his Yaki Awakened, he was talking about this, and he had a clip on his page, holistic wellness coach, I'll say, practitioner. And he was giving this information about, like, when you think of a baby in the womb, it has like this like alienish features at first and everything. And we think of, like, we survive in the water and we are just fine. When we come out, it's like we lose everything. And cutting off that umbilical cord too soon, like you mentioned, and he also mentioned it there, it has the connection to our ancestry. And when we cut that off, we forget. Just like I could think of, like, how people end up having more babies again. It's because, like, it's like that saying, they forget. Why are we forgetting?
Right. Wow. And that, for me, when I was really learning more about the living waters of the amniotic fluid that we develop in, I really sat with that. Like, wow, water really is the first trauma for many of us when our mother's waters break and we breathe for the first time and we're on land. It's like the mermaid coming onto land. And that was a transition that I went through too with the Merchant Mermaid is like, okay, I'm ready to be on the land, but how do I navigate my ship to get to the port? And now I'm on land and now I got 2 feet and now I'm walking,
Little
you
Mermaid.
know? Mm-hmm.
These Disney, aka brainwash movies, they
Right.
all have, if we can just decode it and focus on it,
Yeah.
because I know some people just throw it away and say it's bad, but I'm like, with everything, there's always some good. And
There's
they're
always
telling you the
some.
truth of something. It's just about balancing it out, taking what applies to you,
Yeah.
taking and
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to. So deep sea royalty goes and talks about those deep hidden truths like treasure when you find it, like, oh my gosh, I never knew. And it's
Mhm.
all been hidden there right in front of our face. And you think of,
Right.
people that lose stuff and it goes to the bottom of the ocean. We have to go. I know people told you it's scary, and this is that fear monger that they place on us. If you
Yeah.
don't do this, you're gonna, you know,
Yeah.
go and you'll find. People
Yeah.
ask me, how do you take risk? How do you just do it? You
Yeah.
know, do it.
That's building your security because that's your immune system and it's easier to take risks when you have faith and you have trust.
Yes.
That's the private side of it. That's the like it's like the private consciousness in a way. Um so
And
what
that's getting back into it, getting back into the trust what we were always supposed to have. I think of, like, I remember reading parts of the Bible that just talked about, like, and that's another factor that I forgot to mention about, changing of your name.
Mhm.
Whenever these biblical characters or prophets, so to speak, would be aligned finally with
Yeah.
God. It's like, I'm changing your name from Abram to Abraham.
Mhm.
I'm changing your name. The names were being changed, and
Yeah.
to me that was like taking back, coming into where we were always supposed to be. And then it was like, now I'm going to bless you with the land and give you multitudes of this. And I think of the covenant like a rainbow. Is just like somewhere over the rainbow. Hello, people.
Right. Right.
It's like we're back into the
Mhm.
trust with protection. I think of the Garden of Eden. We were out here naked, coming into truth. Now they reversed a lot, but this is what deep sea royalty really talks about. So those
Yeah.
of you listening, appreciate you. That's where you can find me, deep sea underscore royalty. And also Dionne Ali L and TD University, which is the school we never had.
Nice. So good. It's beautiful to just connect all these drops and just talk to you for a long period of time because I know that we haven't had that much space to do so. And yeah, wow. So much, so much. Thank you. Hi.
And this is what it's all about, like generations to come. I have my daughter right here on my lap, for those just listening and not
Yeah.
seeing.
Oh yeah.
And just thinking of her, if I learn it and get it right, she can learn it, and that is, for generations to come.
Right.
I have to tell hit her everything. And we had a quick little segment for those of you that are interested in just diving right on with your children. She was in the bathtub and she had her little boats floating around, and here I go, crazy mama. Imani, you have to either be on your boat or somebody else's boat, or you're nowhere in this. You're just in this water right now. And her boats are, going around and moving throughout the water. And I'm like, whose ship are you on? And, she pointed to one. I'm like, good, that's yours. And you build it. Because if you're not
Yes.
on your ship, you're on somebody else's, or you're dead and lost at
Exactly.
sea. So,
Exactly.
she
Wow.
got it. And those of you that want to know, Imani, what's your business called? Imani's Party. So you can check her out
Oh
on
my God, so
Instagram. That is her
cute.
business. And this is what we need to be doing when we think about building a nation, creating brands, creating
Right.
this lifestyle, leaving legacies,
Yeah.
getting and operating through a trust. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I'm excited to just expand in these realms with you. And thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and all the stories and all of it. So much gratitude.
Yes, yes, you too. I'm grateful for you, the listeners who tune in, support continuously, even donate. We give thanks. We give thanks
Yes.
because we're, just like you, we're doing the best that we can. We're all learning. We're all unlearning to relearn and learning this new language. Legalese on top of ones our ancestors had. It's so many different forms of communication that's happening. And at the end of the day, if there's nothing that you get from this, check within. Everything you need is within. And I always encourage to start there. If you're feeling lost, you can get my deep sea royalty guide. But I give so much thanks, Water Priestess, Merchant Mermaid. I'm looking forward to much more explorations with you.
Right. Thank you. Mahalo, everyone.
Yes, ashe, ashe.